The starship Harmony descended smoothly through the thick, swirling mists of Alex, the home planet of the Xyler. On board, the crew of human explorers prepared for what was humanity's first diplomatic mission to this enigmatic species. The cockpit was a flurry of activity as they made their final approach to the designated landing site. Commander Jack Rivers, a seasoned diplomat with a calm demeanor, checked the communication panel. All systems go for landing. Prepare for touchdown. He announced to the crew, his voice steady over the hum of the ship. Beside him, Dr. Simon Lee, the mission's lead anthropologist, peered eagerly out of the window. "Look at that architecture," he whispered, pointing at the spiraling structures that emerged from the fog as they neared the ground. "It's nothing like we've seen before." As the Harmony landed, the crew gathered their gear and proceeded to the airlock, where they were greeted by a delegation of Xyler. The aliens were tall and slender, with translucent skin that shimmered in the planet's dim light. Leading the Xyler was Alara, a high-ranking official known for her curiosity about human culture. She stepped forward, her expression unreadable. "Welcome to Alex, humans. I am Alara. We have prepared for your arrival." Jack extended his hand, a human gesture of greeting. "Thank you, Alara. I'm Commander Jack Rivers. We come in peace and hope to learn from each other." Alara tilted her head slightly, mimicking Jack's gesture, touching his hand with hers. The contact was brief but significant. "Your customs are unfamiliar to us. This handshake, is it a symbol of peace?" "It is," Jack replied, smiling warmly. "It's a way to show we come as friends." Dr. Lee stepped up with a device designed to facilitate communication. "We've brought a translator to help us understand each other better. It's important for us to share our intentions clearly." Alara nodded, motioning them to follow. "Let us show you our city. You will find many things are different here." As they walked through the city, Michael Chun, the mission's engineer, marveled at the technology. "Your energy systems are fascinating. How do you manage such efficiency?" One of the Xyler, named Zahn, who specialized in their planet's technology, replied, "Our systems are harmonized with Alex's natural energy flows. We harness this energy through the core of our planet." The group reached a large, circular building at the city center. Inside, a round table was set, surrounded by seats for both humans and Xyler. Jack took a seat, gesturing for his crew to do the same. "We have much to discuss and even more to share. Shall we begin by discussing our planetary cultures?" Alara agreed, and as they all seated themselves, the room filled with an air of anticipation. Discussions like these could pave the way for a profound interstellar alliance, marking the beginning of a new era for both species. The humans and Xyler exchanged knowledge, questions, and laughter, breaking down barriers and weaving the first threads of friendship. Chapter 2. An Unlikely Bond. Jack Rivers adjusted the cuff of his uniform as he sat across from Alara in the grand hall of the Xyler Council building. The chamber was dimly lit by soft blue orbs that floated above the table, casting long shadows along the smooth metallic walls. He had spent the last few hours answering questions from the Xyler representatives, their curiosity about humanity growing with each exchange. Michael Chun leaned forward, resting his elbows on the sleek surface. "So, let me get this straight. You don't experience emotions the way we do?" Alara observed him with her usual composure. "Not in the manner you describe. We process information, evaluate outcomes, and make decisions based on logic. The fluctuations of mood you experience would only hinder efficiency." Jack chuckled. "That sounds exhausting. How do you find joy in things? What about art? Music?" Zahn, the Xyler engineer, studied Jack closely. "We do not require such distractions. Our purpose is progress, our goal is understanding. Emotions create instability." Dr. Lee, who had been quietly taking notes, adjusted his glasses. "Yet your architecture suggests something more. The way your buildings curve and intertwine with nature, it's not purely functional. There's beauty in it." Alara hesitated before responding. "Perhaps, but we do not name such things as you do. Beauty, joy, sorrow. These are foreign concepts. Jack exchanged a look with Michael. Well then, I think it's time we show you what it means to be human. The next day, the humans set up a small display outside their quarters. Jack and Michael worked side by side, unpacking a series of holographic projectors and speakers. Alara and Zahn observed from a short distance, curiosity flickering in their usually neutral expressions. What are they doing? Zahn whispered to Alara. Alara narrowed her eyes. They wish to show us something. Jack activated the first projector. Instantly, a three-dimensional hologram flickered to life, displaying images of Earth. Towering cities, vast forests, deep oceans, all shifting seamlessly as the visuals danced before them. The Xyler delegation gathered around, their glowing eyes reflecting the images. Michael grinned. This is Earth, our home. Zahn stepped closer, fascinated. Your structures are chaotic, not uniform like ours. Jack nodded. That's because humans thrive on creativity. We build, we dream, we express. He tapped a panel, and a new sequence began. This time, music filled the air. A slow, soulful melody hummed from the speakers, and the humans watched as the Xyler reacted. Alara blinked. This is sound, arranged in a pattern? Michael smirked. It's called music. It's more than just sound. It carries emotion, tells stories, brings people together. Alara tilted her head, as if analyzing the vibrations. It is different. Jack stepped beside her. Try closing your eyes. Don't think, just listen. Alara hesitated but obeyed. As the melody swayed, something in her expression shifted, barely perceptible, but there. When she opened her eyes, she exhaled. I do not understand it, she admitted. Jack smiled. You don't have to understand it. You just have to feel it. Zahn and the other Xyler exchanged glances, but no one spoke. Michael nudged Jack. I think we broke their minds. Jack chuckled. We're just getting started. Later that evening, Jack found Alara standing alone on a balcony overlooking the city. The sky above Alex swirled with soft hues of violet and indigo, and distant stars blinked through the haze. You're thinking about the music, aren't you? Jack asked as he approached. Alara didn't turn. It was unlike anything I have ever encountered. Jack leaned against the railing beside her. And how did it make you feel? Alara was silent for a long moment before she finally said, I am uncertain. It was not unpleasant. It was something else. Jack smiled. That's a start. As they stood together beneath the alien sky, a quiet understanding passed between them. Alara, the woman who had never known emotion, and Jack, the man determined to show her its value. It was the beginning of something neither of them could quite define, but it had already begun to change them both. Chapter 3, The Language of Emotion. Jack Rivers stood in the cramped quarters he and his team shared aboard the Harmony. The room was cluttered with an array of items hastily unpacked from Earth. Framed photos, printed poems, tiny carvings, and a collection of music chips scattered across a low table. Michael Chun crouched on the floor, fumbling with an old acoustic guitar he had insisted on bringing. The strings twanged as he tried to tune it by ear. Why do you even have that? Jack asked, leaning against the doorway. Because it's a classic, Michael replied without looking up. And because music's universal. Trust me. Once we show Alara and her people this, they'll start to understand. You think it's that simple? Michael shrugged, strumming a chord that was only slightly off-key. I think it's a step. Jack sighed. Well, we'd better make sure our steps count. Alara's open-minded, but the rest of the Xyler leadership isn't exactly thrilled about us introducing these foreign concepts. Michael leaned back, resting the guitar on his knees. I don't get it. No art, no music, no storytelling. How do they not get bored out of their minds? Jack crossed his arms. I don't think they see it as boredom. They're efficient, focused. Everything they do is about optimizing their existence. Sounds dull, Michael said, standing and setting the guitar aside. Let's show them something real then. The next day, Jack and Michael invited Alara to a small clearing near the human quarters. They had arranged a simple display. A portable holoprojector playing a series of visual artworks from human history. Paintings by Van Gogh, sculptures by Michelangelo, digital landscapes created by artists from centuries in the future. All projected in vibrant detail against the backdrop of Alex's dusky sky. Alara approached the display cautiously, her glowing eyes fixed on the shifting images. These creations serve no functional purpose? They serve a different purpose, Jack explained. They speak to what we feel, to how we see the world and each other. Michael gestured to a hologram of Starry Night. Take this one, for example. This is about wonder. The artist looked at the night sky and felt something so powerful that he needed to express it. Alara stared at the swirling colors and textured brushstrokes. It is chaotic. Michael grinned. That's the point. Chaos can be beautiful. Jack stepped closer. Art isn't about explaining things. It's about sharing something that can't always be put into words. Alara tilted her head, as if trying to process the concept. So this is an attempt to communicate? Exactly, Jack said. It's a way to say things that can't be said otherwise. Michael smirked. Like how sometimes you want to tell someone they're annoying without actually saying it. Jack rolled his eyes. Not exactly what I meant. Alara's lips curved faintly, an expression that could almost be a smile. I see. It is an indirect form of communication. Michael picked up the guitar and strummed a chord, this time more in tune. Speaking of communication, Jack winced. Oh no, here we go. Michael ignored him, starting a simple melody. The notes drifted softly through the air, weaving around the stillness of the Xylar environment. Alara watched in silence, her gaze following Michael's fingers on the strings. What is he doing? She asked Jack quietly. He's playing music, Jack replied. Another form of expression. It's not just sound. It's emotion you can hear. Alara stepped closer to Michael. How does he know which sounds to make? Michael paused, looking up. You just feel it. You play what feels right in the moment. Feel, Alara repeated, her tone thoughtful. She reached out toward the guitar, hesitating. May I? Michael handed it over carefully. Sure. Here. Hold it like this. He positioned her hands on the strings and the fretboard, showing her how to press down and strum. The resulting noise was an awkward twang, but it made Alara tilt her head in curiosity. This is strange, she said, pressing a string and plucking again. The sound is affected by the pressure and placement of my fingers. Michael grinned. Exactly. That's how you create different notes. Jack watched the scene unfold, a mixture of pride and amusement in his expression. This is what we mean by creating something from feeling. It's not always perfect, but it's yours. Alara returned the guitar to Michael, her fingers lingering on the strings for a moment. I do not yet fully understand, but I will consider it. As she walked away, Jack turned to Michael. Well, that's progress. Michael nodded, strumming another chord. Baby steps, man. Baby steps. Chapter 4. A spark ignites. Jack Rivers adjusted his jacket, glancing down the path that wound through the Xylar City's central gardens. Tall, spiraling trees with translucent leaves swayed lightly in the cool breeze. He had agreed to meet Alara here after their last conversation, where she'd seemed genuinely intrigued by the human concept of emotion. Michael Chin trailed just behind him, carrying a small pack filled with what he called the basics of human culture. You think she'll actually show up? Michael asked, slinging the pack over one shoulder. I mean, she didn't exactly jump at the idea. She'll come, Jack said, though even he wasn't entirely sure. She's curious. That's a start. When they reached the appointed spot, an open clearing surrounded by shimmering flora, Alara was already there, standing as still as a statue. She turned toward them at the sound of their footsteps, her faintly luminescent eyes fixed on Jack. Commander Rivers. Engineer Chun, she said, her tone as measured as always. You requested this meeting. What is it you wish to share? Michael nudged Jack. Told you she'd come. Jack cleared his throat, stepping forward. We brought a few things to help explain what we talked about before. about feeling and expressing emotions. We thought it might be easier to show you rather than just talk about it. Alara looked down at the pack Michael set on the ground. And what do you propose to show me? Michael reached in, pulling out a small, old-fashioned camera. This. Ever seen one of these? Alara tilted her head. A recording device. We have such technology. Yeah, but this is different, Michael said. This isn't for surveillance or analysis. It's for capturing a moment, something that matters to you personally. He handed her the camera. Go ahead, try it. She hesitated before taking it, her long, slender fingers carefully gripping the device. And what am I to capture? Anything you want, Jack said. Look around. Find something that catches your eye. Something you think is significant. Alara scanned the garden before focusing on a small cluster of crystalline flowers. She raised the camera, adjusted her stance as Michael instructed, and pressed the button. A quiet click echoed. She studied the device, then looked at Jack. I have recorded the flowers. Now what? Now you keep it, Jack replied. You keep it because it meant something to you in that moment. And later, when you see the photo, it might remind you of how you felt when you saw those flowers. Alara glanced back at the blossoms, her expression inscrutable. I did not feel anything. Michael gave Jack a look that said, Told you this would be tough. Jack, undeterred, stepped closer. Maybe not yet, but give it time. The more you observe, the more you open yourself up, the more you might start to notice something. Alara handed the camera back. I will consider this exercise. Michael sighed, rubbing his neck. Okay, maybe we're going about this the wrong way. Let's try something more hands-on. He reached into the pack again, pulling out a small canvas and a set of brushes. Paint. Alara raised an eyebrow. You wish for me to apply pigments to a surface? Exactly, Michael said. It's not about what you make. It's about the process. Try painting something. Anything. Just see how it feels. Alara hesitated again, then took the brush Michael offered. She dipped it into a small container of paint and made a tentative stroke across the canvas. The color gleamed brightly under the soft, alien light. Jack watched her carefully. What do you think? Alara stared at the streak of color. I am unsure. It is different. Good, Jack said. Different is good. Keep going. She continued painting, her movements growing more confident. Swirls of color began to take shape, and though there was no clear image, there was a certain energy to her strokes. When she finally set the brush down, she studied the canvas for a long moment. I do not know if this is meaningful, she said, turning toward Jack and Michael. But I have never done this before. Exactly, Michael said with a grin. And that's the point. You just created something that didn't exist before. That's the first step. Alara's fingers lingered on the edge of the canvas, as if she couldn't quite let go of what she'd made. For the first time since Jack had met her, she looked uncertain, maybe even vulnerable. Jack decided to press just a little further. Alara, if you could make anything you wanted, no rules, no logic, what would it be? She considered the question carefully before answering. I do not know. I have never thought of such a possibility. Well, think about it, Jack said gently, because that's what it's all about, exploring what you might feel, even if it's something you can't fully understand yet. Alara's eyes met his, and though her expression didn't change, there was something different in the way she looked at him now. Something more thoughtful, more human. Chapter 5 Revelations. Michael Chun flipped the worn guitar pick between his fingers, seated cross-legged on the floor of the shared quarters. You know, Jack, you'd think with all their fancy tech and brains, they'd be able to tell us something about ourselves, he said, idly strumming a few chords. Jack Rivers leaned against the desk, arms crossed, watched his friend. What do you mean? Michael gave a wry grin. We're here trying to teach them emotions, feelings, the whole messy human experience. But what if we've got it backwards? What if they see something we don't? Like, why we're so screwed up about this love stuff? Jack shrugged. Maybe. Or maybe we're just stubborn enough to think our way's better. Before Michael could respond, the door opened, and Alara stepped inside. Her tall figure carried an air of calm, yet her presence seemed more relaxed than before. "You requested to meet again," she said, her eyes shifting between the two men. "I am here. What do you wish to discuss?" Jack motioned for her to take a seat. "Alara, we've been showing you bits and pieces of our culture, art, music, emotions. I think it's time we had a real conversation about what all this means." Alara sat down gracefully. "Meaning is relative, is it not? You attach significance to things we consider extraneous." Michael chuckled. "Yeah, that's one way to put it. But maybe those extraneous things are what make us who we are." Alara tilted her head, clearly intrigued. "Explain." Jack leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Emotions aren't just distractions. They're what drive us to create, to connect with each other. Love, anger, hope. It's all part of what makes us human. It's messy, sure, but it's also what helps us grow." Michael added, "It's like a spark, that thing that pushes you to paint a picture, write a song, build something new. If everything's just logic and function, where's the fun? The beauty?" Alara's eyes flickered toward Michael. "Fun and beauty are subjective. How does one determine their value?" Jack gestured toward Michael's guitar. "Take music. Michael doesn't play it because he has to. He plays it because it feels good. It makes him happy." Michael grinned. "And sometimes it makes other people happy too. That's the thing, feelings aren't just about you. They're about sharing something with others." Alara glanced at the guitar. "You have said this before, that emotions are not purely individual. They connect people." "Exactly," Jack said. "Think about the times we've worked together. You trusted us to show. Strengthen your bonds." Michael nodded. "Every time, even when it's tough. I mean, Jack and I don't always see eye to eye, but we've been through enough to know that we've got each other's backs. That comes from trust. And trust comes from, you guessed it, feelings." Alara's lips curved faintly, the closest thing to a smile they'd seen yet. "Your words are compelling." Jack smiled. "We're not saying you have to feel the same way we do, but it might be worth considering that there's more to life than just logic. Sometimes, taking a chance on something uncertain like a feeling can lead to something greater." Alara stood, her gaze steady on both men. "You continue to challenge my understanding of the universe. I will think on this." Without another word, she turned and walked out. Michael leaned back against the wall, laughing. "I think we just gave her an existential crisis." Jack shook his head. "Maybe. Or maybe we just helped her see the world in a new way." Chapter 6. Forbidden Affection. The night air was heavy with moisture, the faint hum of Xylar energy systems blending into the natural sounds of Alex's bioluminescent forests. Jack Rivers stood on the balcony of the humans' temporary quarters, his arms braced against the railing. Below, the city stretched out in intricate spirals, its glowing architecture blending seamlessly into the landscape. Despite the breathtaking view, Jack's thoughts were focused on Alara and the ever-complicated dynamic between their two worlds. Behind him, Michael Chun emerged from the quarters, a steaming cup in hand. "You're up late," Michael said, leaning on the railing next to Jack. "Could say the same about you," Jack replied without turning. Michael took a sip, shrugging. "Couldn't sleep. Figured I'd check on you. So, what's got you staring off into the great unknown?" Jack hesitated before answering. "Alara, and the rest of her people. I can't help wondering if we're making progress, or if we're just spinning our wheels." Michael smirked. "That's a very Jack thing to worry about. Look, I think she's coming around. She's curious. She's asking questions." Jack rubbed the back of his neck. "Yeah, but curiosity only goes so far. They're still cautious, still holding back." Michael raised an eyebrow. "Or maybe that's just her nature. Change doesn't happen overnight. Trust me, I've worked on enough stubborn machines to know that sometimes you just have to give them time." Jack turned his head to glance at Michael. "This isn't a machine we're dealing with. This is an entire culture. One that doesn't understand or value what we're trying to show them." Michael shrugged. "Which is exactly why it matters. It's not going to be easy, but you've already planted the seeds. Just give them a chance to grow. Jack sighed, looking back out at the city. I hope you're right. The two men stood in comfortable silence for a while, the occasional sound of alien wildlife breaking the stillness. Then, a soft chime from the communication panel inside the quarters drew their attention. Michael glanced at Jack. Expecting anyone? Jack shook his head. No, he walked back inside and tapped the panel, his brow furrowing as he read the notification. It's Alara. She wants to meet. Michael grinned. See? I told you she's coming around. Jack tried to keep his expression neutral, but a flicker of something, hope, perhaps, crossed his face. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Chapter 7, Transformation. The central chamber of the Xyler Council building shimmered with the soft glow of bioluminescent columns. Jack Rivers and Michael Chun stood before the semicircle of Xyler officials, their expressions guarded. Alara had requested this meeting herself, a bold move Jack wasn't sure would end well. This assembly is unusual, said Xylan, the elder who often spoke for the council. His translucent skin shifted faintly in the light. What do you wish to present? Alara stepped forward, her posture as composed as always, but her words carried a new weight. I have studied the humans' methods. I have observed their interactions, their expressions, and their creativity. I believe there is merit in their approach. A ripple of subtle movements passed through the council. For the Xyler, it might as well have been gasps of shock. Xylan folded his elongated fingers. You advocate for embracing inefficiency? Alara's voice remained steady. I advocate for a deeper understanding of ourselves, of each other. Their use of art, music, and emotion has revealed aspects of existence that we have ignored. Michael couldn't help but lean toward Jack, muttering, She's really going for it, huh? Jack kept his eyes on Alara. She knows what's at stake. Xylan's gaze flicked to the humans. You brought this to us. Why should we trust that your way is better? Jack took a step forward, choosing his words carefully. It's not about better or worse. It's about options. New tools for growth. Humanity didn't always value art and emotion either, but when we started, we found it enriched everything. Our relationships, our innovations, even how we solve problems. It's not an either-or choice. It's something that can coexist with your traditions. Xylan's expression didn't change, but the silence that followed seemed heavy with thought. The other council members whispered among themselves, a quiet rustling of sound. Alara's voice cut through the murmurs. I have experienced this myself. I do not merely speak as a researcher. I have felt these changes. They are not a threat. They are a resource. The council grew still again. Xylan's long fingers tapped lightly on the table. You claim this, Alara. Yet the Xyler people have long thrived without such influences. Why alter what is proven? Michael decided to step in, his tone relaxed but sincere. Change isn't about throwing out what works. It's about seeing what else is possible. Think of it like engineering. You don't stop using a perfectly good machine just because you add a new part. You find a way to integrate it to make the whole system stronger. Alara nodded slightly. It is true. This is not a rejection of our ways. It is an expansion of them. Xylan regarded them silently for several moments. Finally, he spoke. This council must deliberate. As they stepped out of the chamber, Michael let out a low whistle. That was tense. Jack nodded. I think we made an impression, but we're not out of the woods yet. Alara walked beside them, her usual calm exterior slightly less guarded. I appreciate your support. It is not easy to stand before the council and challenge tradition. Michael grinned. You did great. They didn't even throw us out. Jack smirked. Not yet, at least. Alara stopped in the middle of the corridor, her gaze distant. Do you truly believe they will accept these changes? Jack hesitated before responding. It's hard to say, but I do believe they'll see the value eventually. You're not just talking about theory anymore. Alara, you've experienced it. That carries weight. Alara's glowing eyes focused on him. You are confident. Jack shrugged. Confident enough. And we'll be here to help. no matter what happens. Michael patted Jack on the shoulder. Exactly. Besides, if it doesn't work out, we'll just show them more music. Everyone loves music. Alara tilted her head. You make light of the situation. Michael raised his hands in mock defense. Hey, I'm just saying it worked before. Jack shook his head, a smile tugging at his lips. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. For now, we wait. The three of them walked on, the weight of the council's decision looming, but the connection they'd built was solid. It was a start, perhaps more than any of them could have expected. Alara was waiting near the edge of the garden where they had first introduced her to music. The moonlit clearing was quiet, the faint glow of the crystalline trees casting an otherworldly light. When Jack arrived, Michael not far behind, Alara turned toward them. Her posture was as composed as always, but her eyes seemed brighter, more focused. You asked to see us, Jack said, keeping his voice steady. Yes, Alara replied. I have been reflecting on what you have taught me about emotions, connections, and trust. Michael leaned against a nearby tree, a lopsided grin on his face. Well, that's a start. Alara's gaze shifted to Jack. You have spoken much of trust, of taking risks to form bonds. I have begun to consider what such risks might mean. Jack stepped closer, his tone cautious. And what have you concluded? For a moment, Alara said nothing. Then, with deliberate steps, she moved toward Jack, closing the distance between them. Her eyes searched his face, as if trying to read something written there. Perhaps I have been hesitant, she admitted. Perhaps I have been afraid to consider that which I cannot logically understand. But I find myself drawn to these feelings you speak of. Jack felt his pulse quicken. Alara, you don't have to rush this. It's something you discover over time. Michael, sensing the shift in the conversation, cleared his throat. You two look like you have something to talk about. I'll just give you some space. With a knowing wink, he stepped back, leaving Jack and Alara alone. Alara's gaze remained fixed on Jack. You have shown me that emotions can be a source of connection. That trust is not always logical, but it can be meaningful. Jack nodded slowly. It's true. Trust, real trust, takes time. It's something you build one step at a time. Alara hesitated, then raised a hand. Her fingers brushed against Jack's, a tentative gesture that spoke volumes. I wish to understand this better. I wish to understand us. Jack felt his breath catch. He reached out, his hand lightly covering hers. Then we'll figure it out. Together. The moment stretched, and for the first time since arriving on Alex, Jack felt a genuine connection. A spark that went beyond words or culture. As their hands remained clasped, the faint hum of the Xyler city seemed to fade, leaving only the quiet sound of two people bridging a gap that had once seemed insurmountable. Chapter 8. A New Dawn. The Xyler capital was alive with energy. For the first time in generations, citizens moved through the spiraling streets not out of obligation but out of genuine curiosity. Music floated from public spaces, paintings were being displayed in previously sterile corridors, and the hum of conversations carried a warmth Jack Rivers had never thought possible in this society. Jack stood on the edge of a large, circular plaza, watching the scene unfold. Beside him, Michael Chun held a tablet, recording everything he could. Never thought I'd see the day, Michael said, shaking his head. Look at them. They're smiling. Well, at least their version of smiling. Jack chuckled. It's a start. As the two men took in the moment, Alara approached from the crowd. She carried herself with the same poised grace, but now there was a softness in her expression, a subtle change that Jack had come to recognize. She stopped a few feet away, glancing from Jack to Michael. You are documenting this, Engineer Chan? Michael nodded. Every bit of it. No way I'm letting anyone back home think this was a fluke. Jack gestured to the scene before them. What do you think, Alara? This is your people, after all. Alara looked out at the plaza, where Xyler citizens gathered around a series of large screens showing human art, as well as their own newly created pieces. I never imagined this. It is overwhelming in a way. To see so many of us engaging in activities that once seemed meaningless. Michael smirked. Welcome to humanity's greatest secret. Not everything needs a reason. Alara tilted her head, her glowing eyes reflecting the swirling lights of the plaza. And yet, even without a logical reason, there is a value. Connection. Perhaps even joy. Jack stepped closer. Exactly. It's not about being efficient or logical all the time. It's about living, experiencing. That's what makes us human. And now, it's something your people are starting to explore. Alara turned to face him fully. I must admit, I never anticipated the depth of what you have shown us. I resisted at first because it felt like a threat to everything I knew. But now, I see it as an opportunity. Michael pointed at a group of Xyler gathered around a musician playing an improvised string instrument. That right there, that's what it's all about. People coming together, sharing something. It's not about survival or optimization. It's just being. Alara's gaze lingered on Jack. You were right. Trust is not always logical, but it is powerful. It allows for growth in ways I never understood before. Jack nodded, his voice quiet but firm. You've changed too, Alara. You're the one who brought this to the council, who helped your people take this first step. That's not something to take lightly. Alara's lips curved into the faintest smile, the closest thing Jack had ever seen to a genuine expression of happiness from her. And you, Commander Rivers, have shown me the importance of taking that first step, even if it is uncertain. Michael clapped his hands together. All right, enough with the heartfelt speeches. Let's enjoy the party. Jack laughed, shaking his head. You're impossible, Michael. Hey, someone's got to keep things light. The three of them walked into the plaza, joining the mingling crowd. For the rest of the evening, they watched as Xyler citizens and humans alike shared stories, art, and music. It was a moment of unity, one that felt not forced but natural. As the city's artificial sun began to rise, casting its pale light over the winding streets, Jack and Alara stood together near the edge of the plaza. The crowd had thinned, the musicians had packed up, but the sense of change lingered in the air. Alara glanced at him, her voice soft. Do you believe this will last? Jack looked out at the city, at the faint traces of celebration still visible. I do. You've started something here, and now it's up to your people to carry it forward. Alara nodded slowly. Then I will do what I can to help them, to guide them. Jack turned to her, his expression thoughtful. You've already done more than enough. What matters now is that they've seen what's possible. The two stood in silence for a moment, the city waking up around them. Michael, watching from a distance, called out, Hey, are we ready to head back to the ship or what? Jack glanced over his shoulder. Yeah, we're coming. He turned back to Alara, extending his hand. Shall we? Alara hesitated for only a moment before taking his hand. It was a small gesture, but one that spoke volumes. As they walked back toward the humans' quarters, Jack couldn't help but feel a quiet sense of accomplishment. This wasn't just a mission anymore. It was a partnership, a bridge between two vastly different worlds. And while there would still be challenges ahead, they had made the first step. Together,